Good. I'll use fresh names not on this list. I'll pick Miriam, narrator, her father Vincent, her mother, her brother Hollis, his wife, and a business associate, Mr. Delaney. None of these appear in the banned list. There are people who will tell you that blood is thicker than water, like it's supposed to end every argument. Like the fact that someone shares your last name makes everything they've ever done to you automatically forgivable. My father used to say it all the time. He'd say it at the dinner table, say it when I questioned him, say it like a warning. Blood is thicker than water, Miriam. Don't you forget that. I didn't forget. I just eventually figured out that the full quote is actually, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Meaning, the bonds you choose run deeper than the ones you're born into. I wish I'd known that at 23. It might have saved me a few years of trying to earn a place in a family that had already written me out. Let me back up. I grew up in a 4-bedroom house in Columbus, Ohio. My father ran a small commercial property management firm, not huge, but steady. My mother worked at the school district as an administrator. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable enough that I didn't think much about money growing up. I just assumed that when the time came, things would work out the way they were supposed to. That's what happens when you're the younger child, the one who didn't cause any trouble, the one who made the honor roll and thanked people and stayed out of everyone's way. You assume good behavior is a kind of savings account, that one day you'll be able to draw from it. My brother Hollis was 4 years older than me. He was charming in the way that certain men are charming, loudly, carelessly, like a faucet someone forgot to shut off. My parents thought he was brilliant. He dropped out of college after 1 semester, came home, and my father gave him a job at the firm immediately. No questions asked. Within 2 years, Hollis was running the day-to-day operations, and my father was telling anyone who would listen that his son was going to take everything he'd built and double it. I was still in school at that point, working toward a degree in accounting. I was paying my own tuition with a combination of grants, a part-time job at a copy shop, and a small amount my parents had promised to contribute each semester. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough, and they had promised. Junior year, 2nd semester, the contribution stopped coming. I called my mother first. She said to talk to my father. I called my father. He was distracted, vague, said something about a cash flow issue at the firm and that things would even out by summer. I believed him. I took out a small loan to cover the gap and I kept going. Summer came. Nothing evened out. When I came home for the break, I found out why. Hollis had decided to expand the firm into a new market. A development project in a part of the city that was supposedly up and coming. He needed startup capital. My father had liquidated a chunk of savings to back him, including, as I found out when I finally pushed hard enough to get a direct answer, the money they had set aside for my last year of school. I sat at the kitchen table and asked my father to explain it to me plainly. He did. He said Hollis's opportunity was time-sensitive. He said it was an investment in the family's future. He said he was sure I'd understand. I asked if he had planned to tell me. He said he was telling me now. I asked if Hollis knew the money had come from my education fund. There was a pause that lasted just long enough to answer my question without words. I finished that summer working double shifts and applied for every financial aid supplement I could find. I graduated, barely, with a degree I had essentially paid for myself and a student loan I wasn't expecting. I moved into a studio apartment with second-hand furniture and started over. I sent an email to my parents telling them I needed some time and space. They never responded. Hollis's development project collapsed 18 months later. He lost most of what my father had invested. My father helped him pivot, refinance some assets, and Hollis was back on his feet inside a year. My family moved on like nothing had happened. I watched it from a distance. From the outside of a group text I was never added to. From the silence of birthdays that passed without a call. I was 23 when that kitchen table conversation happened. I was 27 by the time I stopped waiting for an apology and started building something of my own. I had always been good with numbers. That accounting degree turned out to be worth something after all. I got hired at a mid-size firm, worked there for 3 years, lived lean, saved aggressively. When a mentor of mine, a woman named Ms. Alderton, who'd been in financial consulting for 30 years, offered to bring me in as a junior partner on a boutique advisory practice she was starting, I said yes before she finished the sentence. We spent 2 years building it together. She retired when she was ready and transferred her equity stake to me at a price I could actually manage. By the time I was 31, I owned a financial consulting firm outright. Small but profitable. Solid reputation in the business community. A lease on a clean, well-lit office suite on the 6th floor of a building in downtown Columbus that I had grown genuinely fond of. I was also, as of about 14 months before everything I'm about to tell you happened, the property owner of that building. That part requires a small explanation. The building had come up for sale unexpectedly. The original owner, an older gentleman who had held it for decades, passed away, and his estate wanted to liquidate quickly. My firm was doing well. I had a good relationship with my bank. I had been patient and strategic with my money in a way that I think surprised some people, including, if I'm honest, myself. So when the opportunity came, I bought it. All 6 floors, 9 commercial tenants, a parking structure attached. I hired a property management company to handle the day-to-day, and I kept my name off the public-facing materials because I didn't see any need to advertise it. The tenants knew their rent was paid to a management company. They had no reason to dig further, and none of them did, including, as it turned out, my brother's firm. Hollis had expanded again. He'd gotten into commercial leasing, consulting for small businesses looking for office space. He'd rented a suite on the 3rd floor of my building about 2 years before I bought it. The management company sent him the standard notice when ownership transferred. It was dry and corporate. His firm was one of 9 tenants. He had no particular reason to look up who was behind the LLC listed on the paperwork. He didn't. For almost a year after I bought that building, my brother paid his rent through the management company into my account, without knowing it was going to me. I knew. I thought about it sometimes. I didn't do anything with the knowledge. I wasn't plotting. I wasn't waiting. I was just living my life, running my business, getting up in the morning and doing the work. I had made peace, more or less, with the fact that my family was not going to be what I had once hoped they would be. I wasn't angry anymore. Or at least, I had gotten the anger to a place where it didn't run my days. I was just done. And then one Thursday afternoon in October, my assistant knocked on my office door and told me my brother was in the lobby asking to see me. I hadn't spoken to Hollis in 8 years. I told her to send him up. He looked older. That sounds obvious, 8 years will do that. But I mean, he looked tired in a way I hadn't expected. He'd always moved through the world with this loose-shouldered ease, like nothing could really touch him. That wasn't there anymore. He sat down across from me and spent about 90 seconds making small talk, asking about my firm, saying it looked like things were going well for me. Then he got to the point. He said he'd been having a rough year. The commercial leasing market had softened. He'd lost 2 major clients. He was behind on some payments. He needed a favor. I asked what kind of favor. He said he wanted me to co-sign a business loan, a significant one. He'd already been turned down by 2 lenders and he needed a third party with strong credit and assets to back the application. I looked at him for a moment. I asked him how he'd found me. He said someone in his network had mentioned my firm, said I was reputable, good with numbers, solid financial standing. He'd looked me up. He seemed faintly proud of himself for having done the research, like it was a gesture of respect. Like showing up after 8 years with a loan request was a reasonable thing to do. I said I needed to think about it. He said there was a timeline. The application had to be submitted by the end of the month. Then he added, and I want to be precise about this, because the specific words mattered. He said, I hope you're not going to let old feelings get in the way of a smart business decision. Old feelings. That's what he called it. I told him I'd be in touch within a week. He thanked me, shook my hand, and left. I sat in my office for a long time after that. I called my attorney that same evening. I asked her to pull together some information for me, specifically the current lease status for all tenants in my building, the renewal terms, and what the standard procedure would be if I decided not to renew a particular lease at the end of its term. She called me back the next day with everything I needed. Hollis's firm was on a month-to-month arrangement. His original lease had expired 8 months earlier, and he'd been auto-renewed on a rolling basis. Under the terms he'd agreed to, either party could terminate with 60 days' notice. I didn't call him for 5 days. I spent those 5 days thinking about what I actually wanted to do, not what would feel satisfying in the moment, not what would look good from the outside. what I actually wanted, as a person who had built something and intended to keep building it, for myself and for nobody else. On the 6th day I called him and asked if we could meet. We met at a coffee shop near his office. He came in looking cautiously optimistic, like a man who has rehearsed a conversation and is mostly hoping the other person sticks to the script he wrote for them. I didn't stick to the script. I told him I wasn't going to co-sign the loan. I told him I'd thought carefully about it and the financial exposure wasn't something I was willing to take on. I kept my voice level. I wasn't cruel about it. He didn't take it well. He leaned back, and the old Hollis came back, the one who expected the world to arrange itself around him. He said he thought I was being petty. He said this was exactly what he'd been afraid of, that I'd use a business conversation to relitigate things from years ago. He said our father had already told him I had a chip on my shoulder and that he'd hoped I was past it. I let him finish. Then I told him there was something he should probably know. I told him I owned the building his office was in. I watched his face while that landed. He went very still. I told him his lease was month to month, and that I had already drafted a 60-day termination notice, which I had not yet sent, but was within my legal rights to send whenever I chose. I told him I was not planning to send it. That was not what this conversation was about. I was not trying to take anything from him, but I thought he deserved to know the full picture before he spoke to me again about old feelings and chips on shoulders. There was a silence that stretched long enough that the background noise of the coffee shop became very loud. He asked me how long I'd owned it. I told him he did the math. I could see him doing it. Almost a year of rent checks going into my account without him knowing. He asked why I hadn't told him. I said there'd been no reason to. He was a tenant. I was a landlord. It was a business arrangement, and it had been functioning fine. He said that felt like a setup. I said it wasn't. I said I hadn't bought the building because of him. I hadn't bought it to make a point. I bought it because it was a good investment, and I had worked for 20 years to be in a position where I could make that kind of investment. I said if he wanted to feel like a victim in this situation, that was his choice, but I would ask him to be careful about accusing me of things that weren't true. He left without finishing his coffee. My father called me 3 days later. First call in 8 years. His voice was different than I remembered. Smaller somehow, like something had deflated in it. He said Hollis had told him about the building. He said he didn't know what to say. I told him he didn't have to say anything. He said he thought maybe it was time for the family to reconnect. I said I was open to a conversation, but not right now and not on those terms. He asked what terms. I said honest ones. No pretending the last 8 years didn't happen. No acting like the kitchen table conversation hadn't happened. No asking me to absorb everything and smile about it for the sake of family unity. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I didn't think it affected you this much. I told him it had affected me in every way that mattered. It had affected the shape of my adult life. It had affected what I believed about the people who were supposed to love me. It had affected what I had to build from, which was nothing. Because the foundation I thought I had turned out to be conditional on my staying quiet and not asking for anything. I said all of that very calmly. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I had said it so many times in my own head, over so many years, that by the time I said it out loud it came out almost quietly. He said he was sorry. I believed him. I also knew that being sorry and being different were two separate things, and that an apology on the phone after 8 years only counts for so much. I told him I'd call him when I was ready. I wasn't sure when that would be. I hung up and sat in my car in the parking garage for a few minutes, not crying, just breathing, thinking about the 23-year-old who had sat at a kitchen table and been told, without the words ever being used, that she wasn't worth protecting. And thinking about the 31-year-old sitting in her car in the parking garage beneath a building she owned. Hollis found new office space within 6 weeks. He moved out without incident. He paid his final 2 months' rent on time. I don't know what he told his staff or his clients about the move. I didn't ask. The loan application, from what I heard later through a mutual contact, was denied anyway. I think about what I would tell the 23-year-old version of myself if I could. I don't think I'd tell her the ending. I don't think that's what she would have needed. I think I'd just tell her to stop waiting for the apology before she started building, because the apology might come, eventually, and it will be real, and it still won't fix anything. The only thing that fixes anything is the work you do in the absence of it. I have a good life. I have a firm I built, and a building I own, and a small team of people who show up every morning because I've created something worth showing up for. I have friends who know the whole story and didn't flinch at any of it. I have a therapist who helped me figure out which of my father's voice was his and which of it was mine, and how to tell the difference in real time. My mother called a few months after my father did. We talked for almost an hour. It was awkward and careful and not fully honest, but it was something. I am not going to claim it resolved everything. It didn't. But I am 31 years old and I have decided that I am not interested in carrying things forever. I am interested in putting things down carefully, deliberately when I decide I'm ready. Not when they ask me to, when I decide. That's the part nobody tells you about surviving a family that failed you. The hardest thing isn't the anger. The anger is almost easy by comparison. The hardest thing is getting to a place where you stop organizing your life around the wound, where you stop making decisions based on what they did or didn't do and start making them based on what you actually want and who you actually are. I'm not all the way there yet. I'm not sure anyone ever gets all the way there, but I am further than I was, and that is enough for now. My brother paid me rent for 11 months without knowing it was me. I find a certain quiet satisfaction in that. Not as revenge, but as evidence. Evidence that when you are told you are not worth investing in, and you invest in yourself anyway, and you do it for long enough, the world eventually catches up to what you already knew. You don't have to make them regret it. You just have to keep going until it becomes undeniable. That's the whole story. That's all of it. I've thought a lot about why it took 8 years for any of them to call, and I think the honest answer is that nobody picks up the phone to apologize when things are going fine for them. My father called after Hollis told him about the building. My brother showed up at my office when he needed a co-signer. That timing isn't a coincidence, it's information. It tells you everything you need to know about why people reach out and what they're really reaching for when they do. I don't say that with bitterness anymore. I used to. For a long time I carried this low-grade anger that I couldn't quite put down. The kind that doesn't announce itself as anger, but shows up as exhaustion. As a tendency to assume the worst before anyone said a word. I worked through most of it. Not all of it. I don't think you ever fully finished that work, but enough that when Hollis sat across from me and said, "Don't let old feelings get in the way of a smart business decision," I wasn't shaking. I was just clear. That clarity was the thing I built first, before I built anything else. Before the firm, before the building, before any of it. I had to get clear on what had actually happened and stop softening it into something more comfortable. My father took money that was promised to me and gave it to my brother without telling me. That's what happened. Not a misunderstanding, not a cash flow issue, not a family decision made in good faith, a choice. And when I finally let myself name it plainly, something shifted. The story stopped being about what I had lost and started being about what I was going to do next. That's the part I wish someone had told me earlier. That naming a thing accurately is not the same as being consumed by it. You can look at something clearly and still choose to move forward. In fact, I think you can only really move forward once you stop trying to make it smaller than it was. There's a version of this story where I sent that termination notice, where I let Hollis find out he was about to lose his office the same way I found out I was about to lose my education. Without warning, without apology. With the casual confidence of someone who doesn't expect consequences. I thought about it. I won't pretend I didn't. But I didn't do it, because I realized that the point was never to hurt him back. The point was to be someone who doesn't do to others what was done to her. That distinction matters to me. It's one of the few things I'm actually proud of. Not the building, not the firm, but the fact that I got to a place where I could choose differently than they did. What I've come to believe, after all of it, is that the people who invest in you, really invest, not conditionally, not transactionally, are rarely the ones you were born expecting it from. Ms. Alderton believed in my abilities before I fully believed in them myself. She offered me a partnership when I was still operating from a scarcity mindset, still half convinced that opportunities like that went to other people. She showed me, practically and consistently, what it looked like when someone chose to lift instead of take. I have tried to be that for the people who work with me now. My father said he didn't know it had affected me that much. I believe him. I think there are people in this world who genuinely cannot see the weight they place on others, not because they are evil, but because they have never had to carry anything themselves. Understanding that doesn't excuse what happened, but it does make it easier to put down. I put it down, not all at once. Gradually, over years, one deliberate choice at a time. And what I found on the other side of it was not forgiveness exactly. That word has always felt too large and too final for me. But something quieter, a life that belongs entirely to me. That's what I was building all along, even when I didn't know it. Even when I thought I was just surviving.